Good afternoon. My name's Matthew Ziemke, and I am your last speaker, so I'm between you and the end of the day. So nobody left yet. That's good. All right. So what I do is I'm actually a fractional sales CSO, VP of sales for organizations, very similar to our prior speaker. I work with companies 5 to about 100 million in size, sometimes even a little bit larger. Corporately, Sales Acceleration is an organization that really has been doing this for a number of years. There's about 250 advisors like myself all over the United States, UK. I think we just got one down in the Caymans now, so I have to go visit that person pretty soon. But we actually all have our own individual practices. And we've done about $3 billion in revenue growth management over the years. Part of my team, or my team that I actually was a co-founder of here in Wisconsin. I have two partners in the Milwaukee area, Pat and Kevin. Susan's up in the Appleton area. We work together. We help each other out when we're super busy and share information. But we all still own our own practices. I'm in the Madison area. So a little bit, again, about what we do from a sales acceleration point of view. We have our certified operating management system. We talk a lot about sales infrastructure, sales strategy, what is sales teams and sales management. We're going to get into this a little bit before I get into my top 10. Hey, what do we actually need to do to help people to increase their sales? The sales management system is certified through our corporate organization. One of the things that just came out and what we do, we've got every year about 5,000 clients we'll go out to, and we survey them. We give them 54 questions, and we say, hey, what's going on within your sales area? And this is kind of a benchmark that I like throwing up first, because it's, how are we doing in sales? How does the CEO feel what we're doing? How does the COO feel that we're doing? We had almost literally 5,000 sales agility assessments. I do a lot of assessments on organizations before I even start, because the question I always get is, well, what are you going to do to fix it? I don't know. Every company is different, right? Your culture is different. Your processes are different. So we try to determine where people are at. So I can't give you a canned answer. But this is pretty amazing. When I look at it and it says, the overall score, 79% of the people that responded to it said, if we're doing sales strategy, methodology, the whole thing that I taught you about, that whole sales management system, 79% of the CEOs and COOs think they're doing poor. Just not hitting the mark. Unfortunately, it's going the wrong way, right? It actually went up 3% this year. So we're talking companies as small as 2 million to companies that are 250 million in size. And we do this every year. So let's just talk about, okay, how are we doing individually in some of those areas, Matthew? Well, from a sales strategy point, do you understand your ICP? Talked a little bit about what that is, or ideal client profile. What are your personas? What are your KPIs and tracking? We actually made an improvement this year of 1%. Unfortunately, 85% still say they're poor, below average. Not very good. Our sales methodology, what is your sales process? If you hired a new salesperson today, how would you train him? What would you do? Would you just say, go out and sell to anybody? Well, we already know 80-20, right? That's probably not a great strategy to do that. Probably want them focused up here in that left-hand quadrant. Well, unfortunately, 95% of the people said not very good. Actually had a 5% decline this year. And then we talk a little bit about sales analysis. What are our quotas? Do you have goals? Do you do any metrics? How do you hold people accountable? They're like, yeah, we're not doing very good there either. Unfortunately, we had a 2% decline there as well. And then finally, it's what are the roles and responsibilities? We talked about that. What does a hunter do? What do we want them to do? I call them farmers. I like that one that Tim had as well. We call them farmers. Are they account managers? What are their roles and responsibilities? How do you onboard somebody? Do you just say, go sell, the world is your oyster? let it rip, or do you have a defined plan of onboarding somebody? What does that look like? And the onboarding plan should be, what do we expect out of you? But more importantly, what that new salesperson should expect out of us. How are they going to hold us accountable? What should we be doing to make sure that we're doing everything that they can be successful, right? And then there's coaching and compensation, and we'll get into some of these things, but again, poor overall. So you're like, okay, what can I do to really improve that, increase those efficiencies? I want to do more sales. So we've come up with, and we've proven this over and over again, there's like 10 sales drivers, we call them, that they can focus on. And what is that very first one? Have a defined sales strategy. You've heard this over and over again. I'm going to, again, hammer this thing home as hard as I can, because I think that's probably the best way to learn is, oh, they're all saying the same thing. There's got to be something here. Yes, there is. You know, that ICP, what is that ideal client profile? What do we look like? What do our best customers look like? Are we up in that left-hand quadrant that we talked about, or are we just running around? Are we spending all of our time down in that lower right-hand quadrant? I say, are you doing a shotgun approach, or are you doing a rifle approach, right? Probably have heard that analogy a number of different times. Really important. What are our buyer personas? What do they look like? Who are we selling to, right? What do they actually look like? Are there some sales stories that we can tell our clients that say, hey, this is what clients look like before they met us. This is what happens when they're looking afterwards. Those stories need to be consistent throughout the organization. And then finally, what does that competitor look like? Do we know who our competitors are? Do we care? What are their weak points? What should we be selling to? When we get up against, we say, oh, this is what we should be doing when we're in this particular situation. I like to tell stories. My career started in banking, so I see a couple bankers in here, so don't hold that against me. And then went off into doing some other things, but a lot of health insurance and some other areas. And I had an opportunity to work as a senior VP of sales and marketing for a large health insurance organization. And we were struggling. We were struggling with the fact that we were small, and there's this big company called Blue Cross Blue Shield and United Healthcare who are about 50 times bigger than us. And we're like, how are we going to compete against these people, right? We're just a local regional insurance carrier. And so I came in there, we started doing the analysis, because analysis is really, really great, and we need to figure that out first. And we said, all right, we have to come up with what is our ideal client profile. We sold through brokers. We had a direct sales force, but 90% came through brokers. What do those relationships look like? Who actually understands what our value prop is? How are we educating them? And our salespeople, I found out, had like 120 or 130 brokers, every one of them. How can you build relationships that way? How can they understand what our message is? There's too many of them. And so what I did is I said, we need to actually shrink our sales force from about 550 contracts down to about 300. I was not really a well-liked VP of sales from a lot of our salespeople, because like, what? What are we going to do? I'm like, well, where are you spending your time? Who's bringing you in the right kind of business? Who's bringing us in really good business? Or are they just shopping the rates up? And we get a lot of quotes, we get a lot of activity, as Tim said, but we get no results. And that was what was happening. And I said, our client profile, where we're really strong, we work with our underwriting team, we said, this is what really good business looks like to us. So we went out there and we educated, and we went from 150 down to about 50 for each of our salespeople. I said, each one of them, go deep, understand the relationships. This is where we're strong. When they present it, this is what we're really good at underwriting, and we'll make a commitment to them. Well, we were writing about 20 or 25,000 lives, and 18 months later, we're writing about 75,000 lives. 2 years later, we were writing about 125,000 lives with less brokers, less people. We got very focused on where are we going to get that business from. Salespeople were incentivized. We used to actually, believe it or not, they were incentivized on how many quotes they did, which I was kind of laughing when you put that up there. It's like, who pays for activity? But we did. We said it's more on results. And it's not just new business. And then we looked at things like loss ratio. Are they bringing in good business? How much money are they actually driving to our bottom line, or are we just getting a bunch of bad business? So again, having that defined sales strategy makes a huge difference in your success. You got to start there. Clearly define goals and KPIs. How many people even have goals and KPIs for their companies right now? I'm just curious. Oh, good. Excellent. Nice job. There's a big difference between how much further do we want to go with existing versus new. Tim talked about this. I talk about farmers. Farmers are really good at going deep, understanding, building those relationships. Looking at it by product. What are your leading and lagging indicators? I had an organization where this really came true. I actually came in and we were struggling with the fact that we weren't really growing. They were struggling with the whole idea of, should we even have this product line anymore? And then they hired me and I'm like, oh yeah, we can fix this. But it really came down to is we didn't have set the proper expectations for our people. They didn't know where we should be selling. They didn't understand how we were supposed to hold them accountable. Case in point, I had a gentleman in Houston, Texas. I'll never forget him, and he was a great guy. And owner of the company came in and said, we should fire all these people. And I'm like, well, we can do that. But I've hired enough salespeople to already know that finding a good salesperson is not the most easiest thing to do in the world, right? It's kind of a crap a little bit. Let's at least evaluate to see if these people can do what we needed them to do, and have we committed to them the proper resources for them to be successful. And so I was working with one of our regional VPs and goes, this guy's just not getting in. I said, I'll fly down there. I've got a couple people in the Austin, Texas area, and I'll talk to them. And so I really spent some time and laid out this whole concept about, do you understand the product line? What is your business plan? Here's the activity. How are we going to hold you accountable? He kind of looked at me and he goes, I've never heard it explained that way to me before. I said, on a weekly basis, here's my expectation of what success looks like. And I painted that picture for him. And so he walked away and he struggled mightily the first couple of times, but we started to see some improvement. And by the end of the year, he's middle of the pack, right? So he's a keeper. He's not the bottom of the rung anymore. We did get rid of those people, by the way. Those season Ds were gone. But you could see that he had a passion for it. You could see that it was starting to click in his mind what he needed to do. And he understood the KPIs and the metrics. And 2 years later, I'm sitting in front of 1,000 people because this company closed down their business. And we brought everybody in every year and we had a big party. And he was the top salesperson. And you should have saw the jaws drop because everybody knew who this person was. It's like, oh, what's he doing here? He should have been fired. And all of a sudden he's a top salesperson, right? He's high-fiving me across the stage. Best moment, one of the best moments I ever had in my career. He's just like beaming. To the point afterwards, we were talking and I'm like, God, I'm so proud of you and what you did. And he's like, the guy was literally in tears, very emotional about it. He goes, I thought I was going to get fired when you were coming down to Houston the very first time I ever met you. I said, wow, you were that close. And I got him to laugh, which was a good thing. But I said, look where we are now. And I said, man, you're like the beacon for us. And he was, because everybody could see, hey, there's something here. If this person can do it, we all can do it. And it became a really powerful motivator. But it was really just setting up, having a clearly defined sales goals and KPIs and working with that individual and saying, here's proper expectations. Here's what we're going to hold you accountable to. Number 8, having weekly sales meetings and one-on-ones. They are different. So if the sales meetings, if you have a sales manager or if you're an owner and you're running them, that's great. But you need to have one-on-ones as well. Define one-on-ones. And you don't own those one-on-ones. I'll tell you that right now. Your salesperson owns those one-on-ones. It's their job to come prepared. It's their job to come up with issues, telling you where they're at. What are their problems? How are we going to help solve those issues? You got to give them those tools to do that. That's true. Sales management meetings are big picture. Who had a success story? Let's talk about that. Let's role play on a case, or introducing a new product, or show us your skill and how you actually made that sale. Anybody still role play here with your salespeople? Good. What do you like about it the most? I'm just curious.
I mean, it's super effective, but it ends up being really fun and funny too.
Yeah.
Like it's a weird thing to do. But one, it helps, but two, you can kind of make light of it and play different characters, and it's pretty funny.
It is. I always said it's the hardest sale you're ever going to make, right? Because if you know these people, you're usually selling to your boss or you're selling to your other peers. Hardest sale. It's uncomfortable. I always tell people if you can do a great job there, getting in front of a customer is a piece of cake. It really is, because and I remember doing role plays. But it's also a great chance, as Tim said, it's a great chance for others to learn, to watch. And if you're going to make a mistake or you're going to flub up, what a great environment to flub up in, right? But just like anything, practice makes perfect. Iron on iron, that sharpens what you want to do. I don't care if you're a rookie or if you're a veteran, you need to practice your craft. You got to continue to practice that craft on a regular basis. You need to do coaching with your team. You need to do ride-alongs. How do you coach somebody if you can't visually see what they're doing? You got to be on that ride-along. And ride-alongs today can be virtual. I've been a fractional VP of sales for a number of companies. One was in Montana. I got on sales calls as they were selling. And you could watch how they were actually doing it. I could actually coach. There was one good thing that came out of COVID, and it was called Zoom. And people got comfortable with it, right? But you can do that now. And it's a lot of times you can give feedback that way. But if you're not there, if you're not present, it's hard to really say, how can I manage you? And especially in that one-on-one meetings. The one-on-ones, I have a set format that I always talk about. It's really important because I want people to tell me about upper left-hand quadrants. When they start telling me that they're going off and doing all this other stuff, I'll go, whoa, hold on a second. What's our ideal client profile? What are you chasing that for? Tell me why you're maybe jumping into a different vertical. Well, there's just not a lot of activity there. That's not what we're good at. You want to know why you're not selling anything? Why you keep showing me zeros? Because you're down over here. I don't need you to practice there. I don't need you to practice quote. I don't need you to develop. Get back up here. Get back up and work those companies that we're really good at selling, and they understand what we're about, and we can really service their needs. So there's a lot of things that can happen, but more often than not, I always hear I talked to them. How do you talk to them? Well, we were sitting around the cooler having a coffee this morning. That's not a one-on-one meeting. It's got to be on their calendar. It's got to be on your calendar. Time for us to talk. Time for us to come in and you're going to tell me your story where you're at. All right? Number 7, creating a defined sales process. This is probably the one that I see the least amount in organizations that they struggle with. It's, tell me about what you do. What's your sales process? How do you go about selling within this organization? Well, our best salesperson does it this way. All right, well, what about the rest of the team? Well, they kind of all have their own process. Well, do they understand what your value is? What's your value prop? How do you know that they're really taking to heart all the things that make you really successful? Are they in that upper left-hand quadrant? Nope. So I always challenge somebody. I say, could you show it to me? Because a lot of times I'll hear it in their brain. I'm like, that's great. But let's say, I hire you in here and I said, how would we coach you? How would we bring you on board? How would you train that person? And they're like, well, that's where the sales process comes in. How do you take a lead? What is something that's really good and then qualify it? Now it's somebody, a prospect. And what are the steps and the gates that we need to go through? And oh, by the way, this might be a sales engineer. It's not even a salesperson. They're in your sales process, right? So I'm bringing it in, but we're a manufacturing firm, and I had a client like this. And he's like, well, why would I want my sales engineer in there? Because before we get it out, who's going to price it? Is this something that we can even do? What's the expectation that they're going to turn it around in X amount of days, or does it just get to sit forever on their desk? They're part of the sales process, and we have to communicate that to them. So it becomes not just for sales, because there's a lot of people in the sales process that are not even in sales. They might be in operations, wherever they might be. But what's their accountability? Do they even know that they're supposed to be held accountable for that? It's huge, right? So when I build a sales process, it's not just for sales, it's for the whole organization, and then we share it with everybody so they understand as well. Because it doesn't no good just to keep it here, and that's it. So there's got to be a lot of communication, sharing. What are the checkpoints that need to happen? It allows us to do things like common language, so we are all on the same page. So we can talk in the same vernacular versus everybody's doing it differently. You don't want that. If you want to go from 15 to 30 million to 35 million, you want a repeatable process. You want the whole organization going in the same direction. Preferably growing in that upper left-hand quadrant, maybe exploring a vertical that allows you to maybe bring it back into there. But if you're not doing it and they don't have a defined sales process, it's not going to work, right? Conduct sales training. Everybody doing sales training? Probably not. Usually it's like, well, I hire salespeople and they should just know how to sell. That's true, they should. But it's a craft. And if you're not, like I said, constantly sharpening this on a regular basis, they're not going to get any better. They're only going to be as good as what you hired them for. And what happens when you change your product? What happens when you have a new value proposition or you're bringing in different things? If you're not coaching to that and training for that, you're making a huge mistake. It's a huge investment in these people. I actually got a chance to work with Ryan's dad. I was really young then. I was, no. But I became a sales manager and for this organization. I think Ryan's dad might have even been on my team. In fact, I'm sure he was. And I always talk about the story of my very first sales training. I'm all fired up. I'm a young sales manager. It's like, yeah, this is great. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this great training. Could have been even raving fans or something. Everybody, I'm going to just do this to, right? And I'm making the presentation and I'm looking out there, kind of watching people's eyes, and I got all the young people like, oh, this is great. This is like, man, I'm lapping it up. And then I got people like Ryan's dad sitting in the back going, this is a bunch of crap, right? He's a veteran. And so halfway through, a couple of the veterans, I walk up and say, hey, what's going on? How come you're not like just thoroughly engaged with me, man? Support the team. And I'm like, Matthew, that's not where we're at. I mean, it's good stuff. Don't take us wrong. We're selling much bigger clients. We're looking for a lot different type of sales skills. And I'm like, oh, I missed it, right? I treated everybody the same. We've talked about treating everybody the same. You can't do that, even with salespeople. So that's where I found out about assessments, sales assessments, and looking at people's skill sets and where they're at, what are their weaknesses, what are they really strong at. So I just started doing assessments on everybody. And I found that I could group people together. It's like, oh, I can do a session on that because these 4 people are really good. But these 5 guys over here, they really need these types of skill sets. So I started individualizing it. And I wasn't being generic anymore. And the role playing that followed in that became very strong. Became interesting because a lot of these people became mentors then. And I actually created mentorships for a lot of my veteran people that said, hey, we'd like to take some people under our wing. We like what you're doing. You know, we've been there before. And they kind of brought them up through the ranks. It was fun to watch and see how people could really take simple concepts and then reapply them to help others to get better. The aha moment for me was, don't treat everybody the same. You know, understand where they're going to need, what their needs are. And again, you need to get out there. You can't train somebody and then assume they're going to take it, work it, without inspecting it. So if you want to coach to something, you want to do a training module or a training class and then say, that's it, and walk away, don't even spend the money. It's not worth it. It really isn't. Go out there and train and then actually watch them, inspect them, debrief afterwards. So did you use this technique? Why did you say this? Coach them. Number 5, this is one that's really becoming really popular right now because of AI, but you know, for small to medium-sized companies, being able to leverage technology is huge. Everybody know what a CRM system is? Do a lot of you use it? Do your salespeople use it? Do they like to use it? So yeah, they're shaking their head. No. CRM systems really, to me, has helped a lot of small to medium-sized companies be able to get on the same playing field as large organizations. Because of some of the tools, they're so robust, and it really allows people to say, I can take my sales process. So if I'm saying I want that 80-20 and I want to sell to this organization or these types of clients, and I can put my buyer personas in there, I can actually embed that in the CRM system now. And they can take one of these nowadays and they can walk them right through the process. Download, what are the types of questions I should be asking? Here's the buyer persona, here's what they look like. Before I get to the next gate, here are the questions that I need to have before I can actually move on. I can actually talk to it, and it'll actually walk me through the system so I don't even have to sit there and type anymore with a lot of the technology that's out there. Back in the day, salespeople told me, Matthew, that's taking too much time. I don't want to be an administrative assistant, blah, blah, blah. There's no value. You're just watching me to see how active I am. And that's probably how it was originally sold to a lot of people. And so my background was, I said, I've been in sales. I understand it, but I also know how it can help people. And I was always looking for efficiencies. How can I be more efficient? How can we have more closes? And that to me is where you're going to make money. So you start talking that way to salespeople, and it's kind of the, what's in it for me? You want me to do this? Well, what's in it for me? What happens if I could actually go in there based on the information that you're sharing with me, and I can go and say, hey, our close ratio in this segment is not what it needs to be. Why is that? Let's drill into that. Well, here's 5 competitors, and look at what they're doing. All of a sudden I can go, I've got data. I can make some adjustments. And because of what you were able to share with me, we're now going to make some business decisions that's going to allow you to be more successful. Would that be better use of your time if you could actually tell me that and I could actually drill into that? Well, yeah. I had very few people say, oh, we're not going to use your CRM anymore. The other way that I actually used the CRM system was in my sales one-on-ones. Going back to the one-on-ones, I would sit down and I had always, as a sales manager, I'd always review, going, what are those people? Where are they after? What are they doing? Are they over here? Are they down there? And sometimes you go, they start talking and they'd be like, oh, there's XYZ account. And you're like, it's not in the CRM. And they're like, well, I haven't had time or whatever it might be. And then I said, my comment was, well, it doesn't exist. And they're like, what do you mean it doesn't exist? I said, if it's not in the CRM, it doesn't exist. Nobody can see it. I can't see it. You can't see it. It's not top of mind. So we won't be talking about that. Let's talk about the things that are in there. And if you want to change behaviors real quickly for salespeople, that's one of them. It became something like, oh, he was really serious, which kind of is an overriding theme when I talk to any of my clients. It's about accountability. How do you hold people accountable? And are you doing it consistently? And do they understand what your expectations are? A lot of times you might have it up here, but it's not going out to them. Or I might tell one or two people, and hopefully that they pass it along. It doesn't happen that way. You got to be very clear, very concise, in making sure that the message is heard by all those people. And that's what your sales management team should be doing on a regular basis. The other things that are out there right now, ChatGPT, I was talking about how you're using AI in sales. I do a lot of work with where I get a lot of information, and I've got all this wonderful stuff that we've created for an organization, the sales process and the KPIs and the metrics and everything else. And it used to take me weeks to put together a sales playbook, which is kind of putting it all in one concise place and it's track to run on. And along came AI. And now I've got this guy that I go to and I give it to him, and then 24 hours later he has that. And he tells me all your competition and what you should be saying, and here's the email campaign you should be doing, and here's how you do lead generation for your industry. It's like, holy smokes. It just took it to a whole different level. If you're not doing those types of things and using it, first of all, if you get into AI, I would step back and say, what do I want to use it for? Because I just want to use AI. Well, what do you want to get accomplished here? What's your goal? And then obviously I talk a lot about, and I have talked to a number of groups about having an AI policy, because it can be dangerous, right? You start going to an open source AI environment, and all of a sudden you're putting out there private information, makes your job look easier, because I got somebody going, oh, I can just bring up an app. I don't have to do this. Well, what happens when they're sharing information you didn't want shared? Guess what? It's gone, right? It's out there. And that did happen. I've actually done a presentation for WMEP a couple times on just AI policies in sales. I had these people coming up going, hey, we did this. And I'm like, yeah, that's gone. And they're like, what do you mean it's gone? I said, well, you can't bring it back. So technically your competitor could go out there and look and see what you're doing. And he's like, oh. So that's why you have an AI policy. So know that it's out there. LinkedIn's still a great tool for helping out people. KnowledgeNet AI is a tool that I've used for filling the funnel for a lot of organizations. Kind of takes LinkedIn and the AI concept, and it takes that whole ICP. So I can actually tell it to say, hey, listen, this is the kind of industry that I'm looking for. This is what I want to go after. This is my business plan. Search people. This is the buyer personas that I'm looking for on LinkedIn. Boom. And it goes, here's 400 people you need to know. All right? Well, I don't know those 400 people. But the beauty of this is it says, well, Matthew, you know Aaron, and Aaron knows Dave. So why don't I go to Aaron, say, Aaron, could you make an introduction to Dave for me? It's amazing how much better that's receptive, because it's all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're in the same industry. It kind of follows my pattern, but Dave's probably more receptive going, hey, Aaron, you might want to talk to this Matthew guy. And I'll probably end up using AI and say, here's how you introduce me. Here's what you should be saying. I'll make it even super easy for you. So the close ratio is phenomenal, because you're now getting not just a cold person, but you're now ICP in that area with a relationship with a human being who goes to another human being and says, you need to talk to Matthew. Right? Puts a lot of things together. And so there's a lot of things out there like that. KnowledgeNet is just one of them. I talked a little bit about sales playbook. Has anybody done a sales playbook in here? All right. Sales playbook to me is almost a must-have in today's environment. It really does allow for you to take all those things like the value prop and competitor differentiation, call, email scripts, and bring them all together. I had an organization that I was working with in the marketing area. So they understood this whole concept of what it takes to fill the top of funnel, because they're a marketing company, right? It's like, that's great, I use them for some of my other clients. But they didn't really understand the sales process, because marketing and sales is different. Don't let anybody tell you that it's the same. I was a VP of sales and a VP of sales and marketing, and I hired a really good marketing person because it was different than my strength, which was sales. They should work together and build off each other, right? So that you're filling top of funnel, you're hitting the right people, they're understanding what we're about, you're building those relationships, and then the salespeople pull it through the system, have that buyer experience. That's what you're looking for. That's the beauty of it when it's really, really humming. But what they didn't understand is, how do you even build something like this? What do you mean? And I said, well, you're putting all this out there. Let's wrap it around and put it together. And this will become, quote unquote, the Bible for the organization. And they're like, huh, that's kind of cool. I said, if you onboard anybody, use this as a training tool. And it's not just the salesperson. It could be the marketing person who needs to see this. It could be somebody in operations, like, oh, that's how we do business. I didn't know that. Or, why were we going after that? I didn't know we were really strong in that area. Raise my hand, or I've got an idea. So the sales playbook becomes a really good source to keep everything really tight within the organization, but it becomes where everybody can go to say, how do we grow as an organization as well? Where are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What about our competitors? We're introducing a new product line. Update it. What's our strategy around that? Does it even make sense? Because you might have somebody way down the line going, raising my hand going, that's not what we're good at. The operational person might say that. And I always talk about that. I can come in and build you the best sales front end in the world. I know how to do that. Does the company on the back end understand? And can we do that successfully? Do we make money doing that? So there's the front of the house and the back of the house. Are they aligned? If they're not aligned, don't do it. It doesn't make any sense. Just stick to what you're really good at, spend the time there, or make an investment to say, if we did that, how could we do that? What's our strategy? Is it something that we were in that upper right-hand quadrant? Maybe it's a close vertical. Maybe it's a machine or something, or we have to purchase that we're really good at. Or, as Ryan said, you break it out and we create, kind of a separate track for them. I'm okay with that, but don't mix them all together. One of my favorite slides. Right people, right structure, right roles, right? And you're like, what does that mean? It's kind of a combination of a lot of what we talked about. I won't get into it because Tim did about hunters and farmers. I think we know what those are. Both of them are needed. They're very, very important within your organization. But when I'm hiring for a hunter, I'm looking at a much different person than I'm hiring for a farmer. And I'll actually use assessments that say, hey, what are the traits, I can tell you, what are the traits of a really good hunter? And we're gonna hire to those. They're not the same as a farmer. I can tell you that right now. How do I incentivize them? Much different, right? Do we have accounts and territories? Do we understand what our products, and are people really good at doing that as well? The turnover of the low performers, I can't emphasize that enough. Especially if you have some high performing people, the biggest demotivator for them a lot of times is, why is Bill still here? I mean, I'm knocking the socks off of this thing. I'm going crazy. He hasn't hit his goal in 3 years. And I get treated the same way, and he's still here, and for what reason? Talk about a demotivating factor. And then secondly, organizationally, you're only as strong as your lowest rung. You probably have heard that before. If you haven't, you're only as strong as your lowest performer. So, if your lowest performer is humming, imagine what your top people are doing, right? They're really humming. Great example for this is one of the companies that I had the pleasure to run. I came in and we were struggling with this whole hunters, farmers. What are we doing? Everybody's kind of doing the same thing. We're struggling at growing sales, and they're like, we don't know what to do. And then I kind of stepped back and I said, you know what? We need to build a sales process. We need to develop an engine here. And everybody went through and we said, you could just tell after doing the assessment, that's a hunter, that's a farmer. That one probably needs to go. And then we said, okay, what's that sales process going to look like? What do we want them to do? And we were selling, accountants in here, bankers, I know who you are. We were actually selling through mostly accountants and bankers, which is kind of an interesting distribution. So, because they're not typically the best sellers, as we all know, that's not what they're about. So I had to devise a process that made it really least intrusive to them, where I'm doing most of the lifting for them. And at the same time, not all their clients fit our product. And we knew that. So when we went into somebody, we said, listen, this is our product, this is our service, this is what we do. You have 100 clients. I can tell you 75% of them should be doing this right now. And he goes, yeah, you're probably right. I don't even want to talk to the 25. It's a waste of our time, it's a waste of your time. I said, got it. Hunter would go find those people. But I didn't want the hunter on the phone going, hey, Mr. and Mrs. this, Mr. and Mrs. that. A lot of small businesses, and we're trying to sell them this service. So we built an inside sales team. We wanted farmers. And they were really good at what they did. They were really good on the phone. They had really good phone skills, and that's what we hired to, right? And then we gave them a script. We told the accountant, said, hey, we're going to talk to these 75 people, just introduce us, and then we'll take it from there. He's like, oh my gosh, or she's like, this is great. And I said, then we're going to pay on top of that as well. Oh, this is awesome. This is what to happen. And so we started this process out. And the organization went from selling 200 to 300 plans in a year, no kidding, in less than probably about 12 to 13 months, we were selling 4,000 plans a year, right? It was just because we hit on something. We knew where those people at, but we were tying our hunters up to try to do everything. We didn't really spend a lot of time in the upper left hand. We were kind of shotgunning everything. Even with our accountants and who we were going after, we're like, I want people with big books of business. I don't want the onesie twosies, right? I want people who have 500, 600 clients where we can, if we're getting 60, 70, 80% close ratios, which we were, sometimes even better than that, all of a sudden it's just like, holy smokes, this is fantastic. And all I had my hunters doing is go find me more people. Go find people like that. And we'll take care of everything behind you, service, everything. And it became a really repeatable process. We focused everybody, we brought them in there. The distribution, we figured out who they were, we understood what their buyer personas were. They weren't salespeople, but they had great relationships because I'm usually gonna do what my accountant says, right? So when I get a letter saying, take this call from XYZ, they're gonna take that call. And I highly endorse this product. It was, I hate to say it, some days it felt like you were shooting fish in a barrel, but it was. But that's what you wanted. It was rapid growth. And you can repeat those kind of processes. But I'll close again going, the people who bucked the system, who thought, I've done this, I know what I'm doing, they weren't on very long. Some of my best performers when I first got there were the people that I ended up getting rid of. And that happens because they can't adopt change. And you got to be able to change anything that we're doing here today. 80-20, it's a tough change, right? It's a tough concept. Things Tim's were talking about, it's tough change. I tell my clients, the number one reason I probably won't work with you is you're not ready for change. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, if you're fighting me here, we're not even into it, right? I'm probably going to tell you to go see an executive coach or somebody else before we talk about change, because it's just not going to work. You can't fight the whole way. You're just not there mentally. You're not ready to do things, and it's a lift. It's going to be a lift no matter what, but you got to be open to it. So, to me, right people, right structure, right roles. It could be, and I've had this happen where I walked into an organization, and they were going through it, and they've been 10, 12 million for years. Maybe the people that was running sales has been there for 20 years, right? But the new generation comes in, they want to go to 30, 35 million. Person in that role probably is not going to help them get there. It's just not his or her skill set. Not that they're a bad person. There's probably a role for them within the organization, but I've yet to see where that person has stuck around because they're like, and I actually had one sales VP, the gentleman, we were sitting down kind of doing our first day and we're talking about things, and he kind of came to me afterwards, he goes, I can't do that role. I said, wow. First of all, that was very bold on that person's part. I mean, it took him for him to tell me that, I was like, wow. And I always say, that's being a safe space. So we went back, and I actually had a one-on-one with the CEO afterwards, and I told him, I said, this is what he told me. So that's a really key role. We backfill it, we find somebody, I could step into that role for you, which I ended up doing temporarily, which is kind of what I do, and help them go. And then I hired my replacement. We actually use that person as a consultant. Still on board. He's near the end of his career, and it actually was a nice transition for that individual because he had knowledge that even me as a new person didn't have, or even the new sales VP, but he didn't have the skill sets. He didn't have the vision to take that company to the next level and what it was going to take. It was a big lift for him. And I always remember that when that guy told me that, I was like, Matthew, I can't do that. I'm like, oh, great. But no, actually it was great. And I told the owner that that doesn't happen. That's a rarity. And I said to the owner, I said, you probably have a great company culture here. The fact that that guy felt that comfortable with me to tell me that story. So, all right, number 2, building a comp plan. And again, a lot of this kind of drives home what we've talked a lot about today, but it definitely has to be a win-win for the salespeople and the organization. You got to focus on what we're really good at. You can use it to help acquire people, organizations. I always say, when you're out there trying to find new business development people, you got to put your best foot forward. You got to sell yourself. You got to sell your organization and what you're about. So if they understand, and if I'm a really good hunter, I don't want to have a cap. I want to make, I want to live on the high wire. I want to make a fair amount of money. And as a CEO of 2 companies, I had people making more money than I did. And people said, you're nuts. And I'm like, I'm happier than hell paying those people that. They're like, what do you mean? I said, if they're making that kind of money, can you imagine what my bottom line looks like? And let's go to the bottom line. We were making money hand over fist because I had people who were knocking it out of the park. And I had to be comfortable with that. That's okay, no doubt about it. I wish all my salespeople were making more money than I was, because that's a really good thing, and if they're understanding it, they're probably over in that quadrants that we're talking about, doing the right things. And if I'm really focused, that means my margins are better. So you do the math. I get 10, 15 salespeople doing that for me. I'm doing great. Update, review annually is a must. Your company changes. You can't just do a comp plan and say it's good forever. It's not. Things do change. You might want to tweak it. Maybe it's minor tweaks. Maybe it's major tweaks, but you have to make sure you're driving the right behaviors. We've talked about that all day today. I'm just going to reinforce that. Compensation plans can and should drive the behaviors that you're looking for, right? Be it a sales hunter, be it an account management person, whatever, set it up to drive those behaviors. And then I always say, have them sign it. People are like, what's that about? Well, that means they read it, right? or they should have. There's always one in the group, right? There's always one salesperson that goes, oh, you guys are screwing me. You need to pay me right. Well, let's go to the contract. Let's see what it says. Now, you read this, right? And you agreed to this. Yeah. Well, paragraph 7 says XYZ. It's saved my bacon more than once. I can tell you horror stories of where people didn't do that and went to litigation. And more often than not, the company didn't win. So have those people sign it. It just reinforces, do you understand how you're getting paid? Do you understand what we're asking you to bring in? Do you understand how you're making money? And then number 1, and I think you asked this question before. I will tell you, after 30 years, I've yet to see a really good salesperson be a good sales manager. It's usually the biggest mistake you can make. 2 reasons why. Profiling them, they're not a really good manager. They don't have that skill set. What makes them a really good salesperson is what makes them a really bad sales manager, right? Number 2, I just took my best salesperson out of a selling situation, and now I've got to go replace him. That's a crap game. Not saying you can't find good people, but why would I take a sure thing out of the sales? So to me, it's a double loss. And that's why I would never do it. You're looking for specific things why people are really good sales managers. They should own it. They should have a seat at the table, the executive table, and they should own that sales process every day. Their whole thing is dedicated to growing the company, growing the team, and onboarding people. That's their focus. Anything else, get it off their damn plate. Don't put them on teams here, or let's see if we're going to do this. Nope. If I'm a sales manager, a VP of sales, that's my job. That's my focus, 100%. And they'll drive that home if you have the right person in place. So I'm going to wrap up here. Again, talked a lot about lots of different things. We touched on all these sales management, sales strategy, what they're about, the whole sales process, and what we can do for an organization. And I have questions. You guys are like, my brain's fried. It's the end of the day. Any questions? And that's okay. Awesome. Thank you.